Well, we can speak now to the journalist and director of Viewpoint Africa, Ayo Johnson. He's in our central London studio for us now. Good afternoon.
Hello.
Do you believe that this standoff, which has been going on now for some months, is now entering the final stages?
It would appear so, but we should be very cautious. But nonetheless, Mr. Gbagbo is in real difficulties. He's been trying to hold on to power, needlessly so, especially after losing elections, refusing to allow Mr. Ouattara to be able to govern and rule effectively. And it would appear that he's played a very dangerous strategy, a strategy of some level of power sharing, which he was hoping for, but it's backfired terribly on him. And it's meant that we've had endless fighting, not to mention the impact on people living in that country.
And so how do you see the next hours and days unfolding?
Well, it's going to be very difficult, but I think Mr. Ouattara, his forces have got the momentum in their feet, and they've moved through the country very much so unopposed. We've had large swathes of the army and the police from Gbagbo's camp disappearing, melting away, refusing to engage. I would say that this is the end. We've had lots of high-profile defections. I think Mr. Ouattara knows that this is his opportunity. He's got the momentum behind him. He's got international consensus, and very much the African Union, the AU, the European Union, and the United Nations all support him. So I think he's very, very comfortable moving forward. The problem is, what's the impact? There's going to be a lot of bloodshed, the impact on neighboring countries, not to mention they've got very weak infrastructures, countries like Liberia, that of Ghana, they're fragile states, and the elements of fragility that they have within their economies become that much more apparent, especially so when the influx of refugees into those countries could actually affect their own stability. So that's the worry. Widely, you're looking at how it affects the rest of the region. We wouldn't want to see fighting in Ivory Coast, because definitely it could spread to other countries, and as we've seen in the past, it can happen.
And in terms of Ivory Coast itself and life there for Ivorians, at the moment this violence we're seeing, is this military force against rival military force, or are we also seeing violence amongst civilians?
Well, what you do have is you have Gbagbo's, who's always relied on the army. The army has always been interfering in the politics in Côte d'Ivoire or Ivory Coast. They've actually given him the mandate by which he's been able to stay in power this long. On the other hand, you have Ouattara, who's relied on the rebels from the north, and they've galvanized and supported his cause. And of course, you have, now that Gbagbo is losing momentum, he's arming the youths, arming people in the streets who are not well trained. Who's to say how it will all pan out? But I think the refugee situation and the impact on those living in those communities is the one at stake. And very much so, with one of the world's largest cocoa-producing countries is very much in trouble currently.
OK. Ayo Johnson, we must leave it there. Thanks very much indeed for your time.
Thank you.
Now we can bring you some pictures now. We've been talking about this attack on the UN compound in the north of Afghanistan, in the city of Mazar-i-Sharif. These are the first pictures that we had coming in, at least initially, of the protests that were taking place on the streets of that city as protesters started to attack the office. And then, as you can see and hear, the police began to fire in the air to try and disperse the protests that were going on. And as we mentioned, reports certainly that of 8 people have died, possibly one report saying as many as 11 people